Hi there, my name is Dr. Katie Saints, and this video is on the 7 principles of ABA. These principles are super important because following these principles is part of how we can be so confident about our results. Our research goes back almost 80 years now, and so the research shows we can make a ton of progress if we follow these 7 principles. So Baer, and Risley in 1968 established these principles. And so since then, they've become the ABA standard of what anyone providing ABA services needs to follow. So the first principle is applied. So this is where we really need your help because everything that we target and we work on needs to be tailored to you and what you care about. So all of our goals should be socially significant. It should either reduce pain or increase access to reinforcement. Think about like what behaviors stress you out, what hurts the quality of your home life, things like that. We don't want to cure autism. We don't want to change somebody's personality at all. What we want to do is reduce pain and increase access to reinforcement. So next is effective. So our research is so confident in the results that we can get, right? So the principles of ABA are researched enough that they're considered lawful in a similar way to gravity. And because of that, we can have confidence that if we control for the variables and follow these principles, we will get results. But that is why ABA ethics say if you're not making progress, we need to stop services or we need to evaluate and do assessments and things like that so that we can figure out why we're not making progress. So the next one is behaviors. So we want to target really specific behaviors. The research shows that if we make open-ended goals like I want to eat healthier, or, I want my child to talk more, I want his behaviors to improve. They're not specific enough. So you're less likely to meet those goals because we didn't define them. So one of the principles of ABA is to simply define our behaviors so they're specific enough to be measurable. And then we need to collect data on them to measure if we're making progress or not. So next is technological. So this term refers to our plan being really specific, really clear, and really easy to understand. So if we have the best plan in the world, but nobody understands it, it's worthless. So one of our principles is we need to do the easiest thing first. The ABA term for that is parsimony. So we want to try the simplest methods first, and if they don't work, we'll get more complex from there. So every single member of the team should be able to understand what the plan is and why we're using those strategies. So if we don't understand the plan, we should ask questions, we should explain more, we should investigate so that everybody can be on the same page. So next is analytic. So what's cool about ABA is it's not a cookie cutter program. We need to constantly be analyzing and adapting our treatment to that specific environment. You can't just put any procedure in any environment and think it's going to work. So that's where our data is really important. Sometimes we come in and do analysis. We're constantly looking at, evaluating, and investigating behaviors to make sure that we keep making progress. So next is generalizable. So the worst thing that we could see happening is we work on all these skills and then therapy's done and we didn't do generalization. And so we go away and so do the behaviors. So this is where parent involvement is really important. Community involvement is important. We need more people and more places to work on these skills so that the child will generalize everything they've learned. If your child will only talk to me, that doesn't help you very much, right? So we want to get all of the skills that we're working on generalized to as many places and people as possible. So next is conceptually systematic. And so what that's referring to is that everything we do needs to be backed by research. So again, our research gives us so much confidence that we can get results and we can rely on years and years and years of research that's proven if we follow these procedures, we will get results. And so we don't want to deviate from that. If we're following non-evidence-based practices, we can't have that confidence and we could even risk hurting your child. And so that's considered completely unethical for an ABA provider to do any treatment that isn't backed by science. So every once in a while, a family will ask us to implement a different procedure that isn't backed by science. And so what we're required to do in those sort of circumstances is, share what the research says about it. If the research says anything, and then we can help you collect data on it, but we're not allowed to implement it ourselves. So the question is, how can we improve, right? The more consistent we are with these ABA principles, the more results we're going to get, right? So sit down with your senior therapist and reflect on how can we be more structured yet flexible, right? So having those daily routines and that consistency is really going to help us get results. But we also have to program in flexibility. If we do too many routines, our kids are going to get rigid and they're not going to be flexible when things change or spontaneous things happen. So how can we design our everyday life so it has both structure and flexibility? Do we need to program in spontaneous changes like, oh, change of plans, we're going to go do this instead, things like that. Next, focusing on the most socially significant behaviors. So review the treatment plan together. Make sure all the goals are really what's important, what's going to reduce pain, what's going to increase access to reinforcements. Next, practicing generalization of skills. So COVID has made this a little bit harder. It limits where we can go and how many people we're exposed to, but this is super, super important if we want to create lifelong skills. So brainstorm together with your senior therapist about how we can do more generalization so that your child is able to do this anywhere with anyone. Next, have clear plans that everyone understands. So this is super important. And even consider like extended family too, like grandparents or the babysitter. We want everyone on board because ABA teaches that if some people are responding differently to a behavior, it's going to make the behavior a lot harder to go away, or skill development is going to slow down. So the more we can have literally everyone on the same page with the plan, the more results we're going to get. Next, make sure all interventions are backed by research. So this is something your senior can help you with, or your lead therapist you can evaluate, or say you want to try something new. Feel free to ask your treatment team, like, hey, what does the research say about this? Next, are all behaviors defined and monitored with data? So we want to be really good about that. Sometimes social skills are harder to define. Like, it's really tempting to say, I just want my kid to be socially appropriate, right? But what does that mean? What's appropriate in one context is different in another. So let's make sure our objectives are really clear and really specific so that we're more likely to master them. So now what can parents do to help? So after you've brainstormed with your senior therapist and kind of looked at, okay, should we make any changes to therapy? Can we step up in any way? Then let's look at ourselves and kind of evaluate, what can I do? Can I have a daily routine that I need to implement? Should I change in that way, or am I good to go there? One thing that can really help your therapy team, because you're the one who knows this more than anyone, like what's important to you, like really take some time to honestly reflect on what goals would mean the most to me. If therapy went away today, what would I be sad about that my kid didn't learn or overcome? Really think about what's important to you so that we can design the program around that. So review goals and ask if there's more you can be doing outside of therapy to support those goals, help them generalize. You know, sometimes little things like planning a play date once a month with your cousin or something like that can help with generalization of skills. So just ask your senior therapist for some ideas. Next, make sure you understand the why behind the interventions. Please never be afraid to ask questions. We love it when parents ask questions, and you know, insurance companies are requiring more and more parent training. So, like talking through these programs and explaining why is a perfect thing for us to do together, to make sure everybody's on the same page, and then we're also, you know, meeting that parent training requirement as well. Next, be consistent with your expectations for your child. So, as a parent myself, I know how hard consistency is. And I have to be honest, since COVID hit, I'm even less consistent. And so, what sucks about that is the less consistent we are, the less progress we make, the more problem behaviors our kids have. So, across the board, if we can all work on this with our consistency, it's going to help our kids. We're going to get more results. We're going to make more progress. But this is where you have to be really honest with your team about what you can and cannot be consistent about. You know, sometimes I've made these elaborate like reward systems, but they were too complicated and high maintenance. So I didn't follow through with them. Like I quit using it after 2 or 3 days because it was just like too much for me. You know, so be honest and don't feel bad admitting like, hey, I don't think this is doable for me. Because then we can make a new plan that actually will work. You know, so it is okay if you feel like it's not achievable given all the things you have on your plate. So that is the end of this presentation. ABA is so cool to me because there's so much hope behind it. The research is so consistent that we can make awesome results. We can make progress if we follow these principles. And so, you know, that's why it's so important to pay attention to if we're following them or not, so that we can claim this hope and we can claim this confidence. So brainstorm with your team, see what you guys can do to get even more consistent with these principles, and then celebrate all of your success. All right, thanks for listening, guys.